This is Moja.
Magnificent.
Soon, you shall have one of your own.
A few moments later.
We've gotten a heap of soft reboots in Hollywood, from Halloween, Netflix's take on Texas Chainsaw, Scream, and hell, even video games are going down this path with the recent release of Mortal Kombat 1 and Forza Motorsport, and we've sorta got the same with Assassin's Creed Mirage, a game that goes back to Assassin's Creed's original release by placing it back into the Middle East with Baghdad, as well as being a game that isn't 400 hours long to finish the game. But how is the latest entry in the popular series?
Pretty good. Pretty dang good, lads!
It's been over 15 years since the first Assassin's Creed game released back in 2007 with the original assassin Altair, and since then we've gone back in time with Ezio in Italy, Connor in the 18th century colonial America, and damn, we've had pirate adventures, we've gone to ancient Greece and ancient Egypt, and even more recently followed on the bit of a trend of God of War, and we've had Vikings, which was the only Assassin's Creed game that I was excited for after the release of Black Flag. For the first time since Assassin's Creed Black Flag, which is about an entire console's generation ago, I've been excited for an entry in the series.
See, I did say that.
Well, thanks to Ubisoft ANZ, I got to take a look at Assassin's Creed Mirage, a prequel-style game that follows the character of Basim, who appears in Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and follow his origin story on how he became an assassin. But rather than giving us a copy-paste game in a new landscape, the developers have listened to the players and given us a story that, while not necessarily gripping, at least in my opinion, is much quicker to just pick up and play, as well as being super fun and visually stunning.
You call that a tower? Try the Sears Tower, friend.
Set in 853 BC, roughly about 20 years before the events of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and 300 years before the events of the first Assassin's Creed game, Mirage starts off with us playing as a young pickpocketing thief Basim, who's instructed to not steal a chest, which is where we're introduced to the entry's villains, but curiosity gets the better of Basim, people get killed, and Basim is on the run, wanted for murder, and he's taken in by Roshan, voiced by the fantastic Shora Agadashlu.
What? No, I cannot leave. I need to find Nihal.
Stop and think, Basim. The Khalifa's guard is searching for his murderer, a young thief of your description.
And trained then to become an assassin. But well, they're known as the Hidden Ones at this point, but we know them as assassins. Now, we spend the next, say, 30 minutes to an hour after Roshan saves us, sort of learning how to become an assassin and playing as an assassin rather than a thief, and then return back to Baghdad after 2 months of the opening events of the story, and the prologue has finished and the game opens up, with the prologue being roughly about 2 hours or so. From here, the main story of the game is to basically hunt down 5 masked characters who control the city of Baghdad, but seeing as they're masked and we don't know who they are or where to find them, you'll need to follow clues and speak to contacts around the city.
Who does number 2 work for?
The investigation board in the game's menu act as your career tracker or mission trackers, a bit like a pinboard with different clues and contacts, and on being an Assassin's Creed game, you'll need to do favours and tasks to find out who's who in the masked society and take them out.
Jesus Christ, boy! What did you eat?
You not only need to use your skills as an assassin, but as Basim was a thief, you'll also need to use those skills to steal, hide, and even persuade people to assist you.
I'm still not totally sure. Well, then perhaps we could interest you in another butterscotch candy?
Now, if you've not played any of these games before, and there are a lot of them, Mirage has to be the most accessible in regards to, say, terms of gameplay. Now, unlike Valhalla, you won't be upgrading a settlement and raiding villages or towns or exploring basically all of England. Instead, Mirage returns to its roots with its just iconic parkour system, its engaging stealth mechanics, and its simple, fun combat, and only using some of its newer gameplay additions like the use of the Eagle for scouting out of areas and the inventory system for changing weapons and outfits, but it's a bit less complex or customizable, and I'll get to that. Anyways, Assassin's Creed games play a little bit like stealth games like, say, Splinter Cell or Hitman, but with the combat of maybe the Arkham games or Shadow of Mordor, but a bit less refined as well, because Basim isn't a sort of combat veteran or a swordsman, he's a thief and an assassin. But 70% of the game can be played quiet if you're playing it smart and you're planning out your attacks. Now, Basim can blend into the crowds to avoid detection, he can sit on benches and just go incognito, he can hide in bushes, and in some instances disguise himself to get closer to his targets. Now, the main weapon is the iconic Hidden Blade, which is a under-wrist weapon that is either used to jump on top of people in giant leaping manners to take out your target, or by simply just walking up and stabbing a guard in the neck. Now, as you play through the story and progress, Basim will unlock more tools to aid him in stealth and combat, such as smoke bombs, or the use of throwing knives, which you actually start off with, which for me are a godsend. Now, not only are the throwing knives used to just quickly take out an enemy or quickly take them out if they've seen you or if you need to close a gap, but they can also be used in the environment to drop hanging items on unsuspecting goons. Being an assassin, Basim is also trained in the art of parkour, and I think that's a bit of a prerequisite really, but the climbing and falling in the game for getting around is actually pretty impressive, but it does have a couple of bugs here and there still though as well. Basim also has access to an eagle to scout out areas, and if you've played anything like, say, Ghost Recon, it's basically a drone that you can use to scope out the area. You can tag guards and you can highlight any points of interest, and it comes in handy if you want to play stealthily. Now, when you do get caught, and it does happen as well, you'll have to defend yourself in combat, unless you can run. If you can run, maybe run. But Basim is equipped with a sword and a short dagger. Now, you have standard quick attacks, you've got heavy attacks, you have a parry and a dodge, all of which use stamina. So if you attack too much or if you dodge too much, you won't be able to do anything because you're out of stamina. So if you play something like this year's Jedi Survivor, the combat will be a little familiar, but also less Dark Soulsy, and you won't have the ability to use the Force.
Well, duh.
Now, some enemies have attacks that must be dodged, and other enemies wear heavy armor that is only weak on its exposed rear, so you need to wait for them to attack, dodge, and then hit them in the back when they're exposed.
Pretty standard, really.
Now, just like Valhalla, there is the RPG system with skill trees and such, but Assassin's Creed Mirage isn't like the previous RPG Assassin's Creed games. You'll have the option to change out Basim's sword and daggers, and each weapon has its own buffs and perks, which can be upgraded by visiting blacksmiths, but they require the relevant materials and schematics. Outfits can be changed for Basim too, but it is a whole outfit change, not piece by piece, and just like weapons, outfits have different perks, and there's an option to wear a uniform, which is just a visual change, which will keep the relevant outfit's perks. So if you want to wear a particular outfit, the uniform won't cancel out those perks, if that makes sense. You'll also have a small option for flair with a talisman, which is basically like a weapon charm from Siege that hangs off Basim's back, giving you the option to personalise Basim however you see fit, just with this sort of charm hanging off him. Now, as you can see, my weapons do look a little weird, as does my eagle and my horse, and that's with the optional Prince of Persia Sands of Time pack. And Assassin's Creed games are now known for having some fun and wacky additional outfits and weapons in this game as optional extras, and the Dagger of Time actually has a slowing down perk, and I gotta say, that's pretty damn rad. Now, unlike Valhalla, Assassin's Creed Mirage doesn't take place over what is basically an entire country or two. It takes place in the city of Baghdad, and the map size in the game isn't something that was completely daunting, where I felt overwhelmed, and travelling to the other side of a map was a chore. But it was the perfect size for comfort and wanting to explore. The first time a mission told me to go from one side of the map to the other, I did let out a bit of a groan, but then I saw the different areas we get to explore, like open deserts and mining outposts in the middle of nowhere, and hell, even raiders and bandits, and it kinda had me excited to go out and explore the whole world outside of the city walls. Now, with the inventory system, you're not just buying new weapons and items, as things are a little different here. To unlock new weapons or outfits or schematics to upgrade these, you'll need to open particular loot chests which act as a little bit of a puzzle. And anytime I came across these, either from open exploration or by using my Eagle Scout, I had to stop whatever it is I was doing and open that chest.
The box!
But while Basim is an assassin, he is also a thief, and there's the option to pickpocket NPCs either for money or for quest items like, say, keys. Now, the minigame is a little sort of quick time event where you need to press the relevant button inside of a zone to successfully steal the item, and if you're too late or too quick, that person will alert the guards that you're trying to steal from them.
Stealing! How could you?
And what was even a cool little Easter egg too, but after about 10 seconds or so after you've stolen something from the NPC, they'll notice that their items are missing and call the guards in general, saying that there must be a thief nearby, which is kinda cool.
My purse was hurt! Girl, call out the sorta! Yes, a purse! I carry a purse!
Speaking of which, Mirage 2 has a wanted system, and while it's not something like, say, Cyberpunk, it's an overall simple system where you have wanted posters plastered around a city, and there are 3 levels of being wanted. One, where if you get too close to the guards, they'll recognize you a little bit, to level 3, where even if a civilian sees you, they'll call out to the guards saying that they found you and you're that murderer guy. Now, to get rid of the wanted level, you want to rip posters off the wall if you see them, and sometimes they're not nearby, or you can give a token to a town crier, basically telling them that you've done nothing wrong and they'll spread that message. Which, speaking of tokens, there are 3 particular tokens in the game that are basically used like the coins in John Wick, where you can use them, for example, to make the general store cheaper, and general stores sell items like consumables like health potions or throwing knives, even an outfit or dyes to change the colour of your outfits. You can also hire mercenaries to help fight for you if you're in a particular area. You can also use a coin to bribe people for information, or you can even sneak into restricted areas. Some tokens are even required to unlock supply chests, and the best way to get these tokens is by pickpocketing people. I've got to say though, Assassin's Creed games haven't overly been my jam for a little while. Now, while I did enjoy Valhalla, it was a very long game, and a mate of mine enjoyed Assassin's Creed Origins when that originally released and suggested that I take a look at it. And when I saw it was an RPG with levels and enemy levels, when I shot an arrow into a target's head who wasn't wearing a helmet and he didn't die, it kinda broke me, and Valhalla did have a bit of these mechanics too, but I overall enjoyed the Viking aesthetic to the game, but it was a little bit too daunting for me to return to a franchise after so long, not knowing how to play these newer versions of the Assassin's Creed games. But Mirage feels like playing a modern classic Assassin's Creed game. The controls are familiar, the world is familiar, and it brings over some of the RPG mechanics from previous games without being too daunting. Now, there are some things that personally I think maybe should have carried over from other games like Valhalla, and it's the customization. I enjoyed being able to customize and create Ivor in my own way with beards and tattoos and hairstyles, and I was hoping we could do the same thing here, but it's a bit like more like, say, playing a original Assassin's Creed game, where we're playing as a character rather than a half character, half create your own character like Valhalla. I did also have a few short parkour bugs too, but it more so added a bit of a laugh rather than any gameplay hindrance, if that makes sense. Now, there were also some quests that kinda broke me. Now, without spoilers, there's a moment where you need to find, or I needed to find, a poet in the game, and the NPC told me they were in the West Courtyard. So, I used my compass at the top of the screen, and I went to the West Courtyard, and I couldn't find them. Hell, I even called my eagle, and I still couldn't see this person, and after 20 minutes of looking, the game was referring to the West, not as a compass location, which is what I generally think the West would be, but the West Courtyard was the left courtyard from the main entrance, which made no damn sense to me. As an assassin too, for certain points you need to eavesdrop into conversations, and you'd think you just need to be inconspicuous and listen in on the conversation. However, a few of these eavesdropping moments I'd try to blend into the crowd, I'd try to hide into a bush, and the conversation wouldn't start until I was sitting on a bench blending in, by myself mind you, to then start listening in on the conversation.
Jim knows, he was there. This is preposterous.
Robert!
Let's get Jim in here.
I also personally found the story a bit disinteresting and a little bit too complex, especially if you're not synced into the story of Assassin's Creed, a story that's been going on for 15 years. Where Ezio's story, or even more recently, Ivor's personal story of revenge in Valhalla had me more invested, Basim's story about how he became an assassin and the overall sort of main story campaign, it was kinda eh. But what kept me glued to the screen was the overall gameplay. Like, this was the original Assassin's Creed that I remembered in my brain. As I mentioned, it's familiar, it's not overly daunting to explore or play it, and it kinda hit me in the member berries when I first played the original games as a kid. A bit like, say, if you played the Spider-Man movie tie-in games or the Wicked Ultimate Spider-Man game, and then you played the PlayStation Spider-Man game, and how it felt familiar yet new at the same time. Finally, just something weird I noted too, but the game does have some in-game cutscenes here and there, and they don't look as good as the gameplay graphics, if that makes sense. Now, I did play this on PC with a 4080 on ultra settings, and the gameplay graphics looked better than the cutscene in games. And I'm not meaning sort of in-game cutscenes, I'm meaning sort of the pre-rendered cutscenes. And is it me, or does the gameplay look better? Overall though, would I recommend Assassin's Creed Mirage? It kinda depends. If you played and enjoyed Assassin's Creed Valhalla and you want to know more about Basim, then the answer is yes. If you played the original games but you felt the newer RPGs were too big or maybe even too large and daunting or too long, then yeah, I'd say take a look at Mirage. Now, I've got a fair few mates who don't have 100 plus hours to sink into a game to see how the story ends and simply just want to pick up, play, enjoy the story, and then if they have time, if they can be bothered, explore the world and collect things, and Mirage lets you do this. Now, while the story might be a little too complex for new fans, or at least too complex for me in my opinion, the character of Basim is portrayed pretty damn well, the world is beautiful, the gameplay overall is just fun and simple, and that's all you want when you play a video game, really. So if the previous Assassin's Creed games felt too much and you're looking for a modern classic entry in the series, then Assassin's Creed Mirage should be something to look at. But whether you've been with the series for over 15 years or it's your first time playing an Assassin's Creed game, always remember to play with each other and play with yourself.